The first speaker, Jolene from Aware, talked about xenophobia. The previous speaker, Vincent Vijaysinger, also talked about xenophobia. I agree with Vincent. Hey Vincent, I'm agreeing with you, but he's not listening to me. I agree, Vincent, that we should not take xenophobia as an excuse to tell Singaporeans that we should not discuss immigration and foreign labor policy. Statistics are not xenophobia. Unless we have transparency, unless we know and understand the statistics, in my view, it helps to ensure that we will not be xenophobic. Someone asked me earlier, how many times you come to Speaker Corner already? See, I don't really know, but I think about 20 times. The first month in September 2007, when they opened up Speaker Corner for protests, the online citizen, I was one of the speakers from the online citizen, we were here to protest public transport fare increase. And since then, of course, there have been many public transport fare increase protests as well. So I've been here for 20 times. And then I began to reflect. I come to Speaker Corner for 20 times. I have written thousands of articles. I've written hundreds of letters. I've delivered hundreds of speeches. But today, I have for you the one statistic which is the most important, the saddest statistics I've ever seen, the most significant, the most startling. You know, in the last 7 years or so, from 2007 to June 2013, we created 260,000 new jobs for locals. Locals are Singaporeans and PRs. So in the 7 years, we created, means the employment change, the increase in the jobs, 260,000 for locals. But in the same period, we increased the number of jobs for foreigners, 470,000. So more or less, for every job that we created in the last 7 years for local, and I'm not even saying a Singaporean, we created almost 2 jobs for foreigners. Nothing wrong with that, because we have been told time again, if we don't have jobs for foreigners, we don't increase the jobs, the economy don't grow, there'll be no jobs for Singaporeans as well. But in the same 7 years, we granted 450,000 new citizens and new PRs. Slight gap in the period. The jobs statistics I gave you earlier is 2007 to June 2013. Now when I cite the immigration statistics, it's until December 2013. Last 7 years, we gave away 450,000 new citizens and PRs, and we only created 260,000 new jobs for locals. So how many of the 260,000 jobs actually went to Singaporeans when you gave away 450,000? Isn't this a very sad statistic? Isn't it the worst statistic you've ever heard? We need transparency, because I suspect the people who make policy may not even know how bad it is. You know, what's the problem if you create 260,000 jobs for locals and then you create 470,000 jobs for foreigners, and then you give away 450,000 new citizens and PR? What's the problem? The problem is, what does it mean for the Singaporean worker? On May the 1st, I really talked a lot about the problems for Singaporean workers in terms of jobs. So today I will not repeat myself. Let me just talk a bit about the problem from Singaporean workers from the perspective of wages. What's the point of having a job when in 10 years you have no pay increase? What's the point of having a job when you keep on working longer and longer hours and then you get the same pay year after year? What's the point? I'm going to give you the statistics now. In the last 10 years or so, for the 20th percentile of income workers, the real increase in their pay was only 0.3% per annum for the last 10 years or so. What does that mean, 0.3%? You know, you see the uncle who comes to clean your table? 10 years ago, he was earning $1,000. Now, 10 years later, real increase. He got $30 after 10 years. $3 a year. Aren't you ashamed that you live in a country where, unlike any other country, the people who come to clear your tables are old uncles and old aunties? And I'm an old uncle, so I just turned 60. Aren't you ashamed that every time you eat in the hawker center, some very old or frail-looking person will come to sell tissue papers to you? And now we understand that they have to apply for an NEA license and pay $120. They're all illegal hawkers. So, this is the 20th percentile. What about the median? Median is half the salary. In the last 5 years or so, the real increase in the median salary was only 1% per annum. It's not so bad, 1%, right? Okay. You got 2,000, right? So 1% is $20. After 5 years, got $100 increase. But you see, there are many different ways of measuring wages. What I have cited to you is the gross wage. What about total wages? In the last 5 years, cumulative total wages was negative. 5 years, cumulative, not 1 year. I mean, all 5 years add together, still negative. What about basic wages? Basic wages means basic pay. We estimate in the last 12 years or so, for 6 out of the 8 major occupations, the real increase in the basic wage is either 0 or negative. You know what's the basic pay of a security guard? $800. The gross pay is about $1,008 nowadays. You know why the big difference? Because they work, say, 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. It's all overtime pay. If the wages have gone up by 0.3% per annum or 1% per annum, much of it is due to the fact that we are now the #1 in the world for working the longest hours in the world. It used to be South Korea, now we're #1. So you work the longest hours, your pay never go up. There are more than 110,000 people who work full-time and earn less than $1,000. You ask yourself, can you survive on $1,000? Okay, let's move on from wages. PMETs. You look at the latest data. Of all the category of workers, which category has the highest redundancy rate? That means easiest to get retrenched. PMETs. Look at all the Labor Day message, year after year the same. Oh, you must upgrade yourself. Upgrade yourself, become PMET. You upgrade. And what happens? You have the highest redundancy rate. Not only that, look at the latest data. Only 66% of those who were retrenched PMETs were able to get a job within 12 months of being retrenched. What does that tell you? 34% of 1 out of 3, after 12 months still don't have job, you know. And the funniest thing is, what does the spokesman from the labor union say to this? That 34% take more than 12 months. Oh, maybe they're taking the time to upgrade themselves. Maybe they're taking the time to find a job. I got nothing to throw today, so I cannot vent my despair or anger, you know, when I see remarks like this. Today's news and the last few days' news. Oh, we want to allow you to work to 67 now, you know. We're going to extend the Re-Employment Act to 67. And then they show you some people they interview, you know. Look at today's newspaper. Something like, it's okay to have lower pay, you know, say older workers. The Re-Employment Act is the biggest joke in the world. Roy, Hui and I, we went to Oslo last month. We did an interview with the Confederation of Trade Unions, something like our trade union movement. The only difference is they have many unions there, not like we have one big one. When we told them how our Re-Employment Act worked, I don't know whether the guy was laughing or what. You know? First, under the Re-Employment Act, here's the number one joke. Go home and tell your friends. Under the Re-Employment Act, when you turn 62, your employer can offer you re-employment based on any terms at all. And if you don't accept, that means they have fulfilled the obligation under the legislation. So we are 62, I said, I'm going to cut your pay by half. I'm going to make you work double as hard. I'm going to send you to work far, far away. You don't want, right? I have done my job. I'm okay. I did not break the law. Under the Re-Employment Act, it says, if you don't offer re-employment, you have to compensate the worker one time, $4,500 to $10,000. You know, recently you read in the news, the pilots, most of them, when they reach 62, they've been told, we're not going to re-employ you, you know. So how much you think the pilots get under legislation? Maximum $10,000. You think that's not bad enough, huh? It's up to the company and the supervisor to determine whether the worker is healthy enough to be offered re-employment or not. So first I can say, I don't think you're healthy enough, you know, you old already, so I don't offer you re-employment. Okay for by the legislation. Or I say, I give you terms that you cannot accept. Okay also, I also okay by the legislation. I don't even have to pay you the $4,500 or the $10,000. All I have to do is say, I think you're not healthy, or I offer you terms that you cannot accept. This type of Re-Employment Act, you want to extend to 67, you will all die, okay? In 2012, a government ministry commissioned a study on retirement. The study found that Singaporeans are better, have prepared for retirement than the average OECD country. And then the data goes on to show you that if you look at the median wage of Singapore workers, from the age of 38, the real pay start to drop. What does that mean? That means there is widespread wage discrimination in Singapore. The moment you cross 38, in real terms, your pay is going down. A cleaner at 30 plus, the pay maybe $1,500. By the time he's 65, the same cleaner get $1,000. This is called age discrimination. And so you read the newspaper today, when they tell you, Singaporean older workers say, it's okay to get lower pay as long as they can continue the job. The pay is already so low for the lower income worker. If you have to accept even lower pay to be re-employed, might as well go and die. Right? Every day the things that we read, the news is so funny. And you know what's the saddest thing? The saddest thing is you don't have a job, it's harder to get a job, your pay never go up, you work longer hours, they ask you to work longer but at lesser pay. You know what's the biggest problem? The biggest problem is, in Singapore, from a cash flow perspective, the government doesn't spend a single cent on healthcare or CPF or HDB. So if the government doesn't spend a single cent on these basic necessities that you need, and then you don't have enough money or your wages are going down, life is very hard, right? So, 2014 Labor Day, the saddest Labor Day of my life, because I want to repeat the statistic again, because it is so sad, it is so startling, it's so cynical. My friend say it's so tokong, the most tokong one. In the last 7 years, we created 260,000 jobs for locals, but we created 470,000 jobs for foreigners. And against the 260,000 jobs for locals, we granted 450,000 new citizens and PRs. You go home and think about it. What kind of country have we become? Thank you.